We
Miss
can't
Abby, we can't
we
hear
we
that
can't
noise.
hear the noise here.
Okay, that's fine. As long as it's not a
Don't
bomb
forget
going off
about
or
that.
something about to explode.
No, nothing is exploding. All right, are we good to go now?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Nifemi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Thinking Reimagined podcast. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Have you heard about the good girl syndrome, or what some call the good girl complex? It has to do with certain social behaviors internalized by young women by virtue of what is accepted to be right or wrong, or what they are told to do or not to do, and its intended impact on quality of life. But because I didn't have the unique opportunity to be a girl, I've asked 3 people who were once girls to join me on this podcast, and I'd like to introduce them to you. Dr. Amma is the founder of Live Abundantly. She's also the executive producer of the Thinking Reimagined podcast. I left out Allied Empowerment. All right, so she's also the founder of Allied Empowerment. So Dr. Amma, I'm looking forward to taking you down memory lane today from when the doctor used to be a girl. I hope
I'm looking forward.
For that.
I'm looking forward to this discussion, Nifemi, because it's one that we need to have. We really need to put this on the table, dissect it, and toss it out of the window, because this good girl syndrome, this good girl complex is affecting girls and women in immeasurable ways at home, in school, in the workplace. And really, it's a detriment to the success and the well-being of the other 50%. And the types of pressures that we put on our girls as to how to behave, how to present themselves, how to work, how to interact. The list goes on, is immense. And if we as stakeholders don't begin to address this, it's going to continue. So I am really excited to be joined by 2 other dynamic women who are vocal on this subject. Vina, who is, what can I say, a co-Savitas member and an ambassador. Are you an ambassador at Savitas? Yeah.
Yes.
So we're both co-global ambassadors for Savitas World Business Women in the UK. And of course, you've got Miss Abby joining us, who is an educationist and a passionate individual when it comes to issues of parenting and trauma. Nifemi, we can't wait to hear what your questions are today, because we're ready for this discussion, aren't we, ladies?
We most certainly are.
We can't hear you, Nifemi. Have you run away already? Can't hear you, Nifemi. You're muted, Nifemi. If you can unmute, we'll hear you.
Oh, I think we chased him away with our enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think we have. Nifemi has run. He left the building already.
I'm right here. All right, good to hear that, Dr. Amma. Miss Abby, founder parties, good to see you. It's been a while. Where have you been?
I've been busy getting lots of other things done that I do. I'm sure you know I teach as well. So it's been examination period. There's been a huge exodus of Nigerians, as you know, leaving and coming to settle in the UK. So I've had lots and lots of work to do and preparing myself to rejoin.
Aha. You're welcome back. Good to see you.
Rejoin the podcast, of course.
Rejoin the podcast family.
Yes.
All right. So we have Vina joining us for the first time, Vina Ramphar. In addition to all that Dr. Amma said about you, Rita is also a classical India dancer with PhD in philosophy and dance. That's amazing. I snuck to your Instagram page, and I must say your dances are quite unique and interesting. I think there's more to dance than most of us know, right?
There is a lot more to dance. In many ways, all of life is just a dance.
Aha, interesting. But especially when you talk about dancing for meditation, right?
Mhm. Yes. So, having trained in classical Indian dance, I've come to realize that the way that we take up space through the body is extremely important. And this relates directly to the good girl syndrome. So, because as girls, what we're taught is don't take up space. Take up as little space as you possibly can, because that will make other people feel comfortable. So, as a dancer, one of the main things that I am expressing and teaching is how to take up space fully, unapologetically, but also harmoniously with everything around us.
It's almost sounding
I
spiritual.
agree. It is. I would say it is. And Nifemi, we're here to take up our space. Remember my saying about bring your benches? It's along that line as well. Women need to own their spaces and give
Absolutely.
voice to their being, because really what people do to girls by imposing their rules of how we should engage is minimize us, so that when we do express ourselves, people either recoil and think, well, that's not the way she should express herself, as opposed to, oh, well, she's got something to say, let us listen. So boys are socialized very differently. And it all starts in childhood. And that's why I was so eager to have this conversation today with these women, because their vantage points is interesting. And we come to the intersection of all of it. And it gives credence to the need to get rid of this syndrome.
Indeed.
It's very
So-
pervasive. Yeah.
Let's get to it. I'd like to find out from everyone on this panel about your experience with the good girl syndrome growing up. Vina, so I'm going to ask you the first question you usually would ask all your guests on tearing up the good girl script.
Thank you for mentioning. Yes. So actually, this whole session came about through a conversation that Dr. Amma and I had at a Savitas lunch, where I spoke about my podcast, Tearing Up the Good Girl Script. So, which actually started many years ago in 2008 as a workshop for women called Tearing Up the Good Girl Script. Now, the good girl script is the one that says you shouldn't be doing that because you're a girl. And it has many, many iterations. It has iterations for our emotional expression, for our ambition, for our intimacy, for our romantic relationships, for our friendships, for the way we take up space in life. But what I've found is that every time a woman, particularly women leaders, every time we reach a new level of expression, it's because we have torn up a version of that script that says you shouldn't be doing that because you're a girl. So if I think back, this is the first question that I ask guests on Tearing Up the Good Girl Script, right? So my first question is, when was the first time you can remember in your childhood that you were given that message? You shouldn't be doing that because you're a girl. Now, I think in my childhood, I'm sure that there, like all of us, there were so many ways in which that message was given. And I think that in this moment, what I can remember is that while learning how to dance, I was being taught how to take up space. But then as soon as I came out of the dance class or off the stage and went into real life, I had to go back into this being a good girl. And I remember, I'm sure all of us here on the panel can remember being told, being praised for being good, being praised for doing what we were told. I mean, that was something that my mother would always say to me, just do as you're told, just do as you're told. And that squashes you, it stops your expression. So I had this duality going on of learning how to take up space and being encouraged to take up space as a dancer, but then in my life, being encouraged not to. So I had this kind of duality going on. And I think in many ways, my work is very much to learn how to take up space in life as well. Thank you, Nifemi.
Fantastic. Quite expressive.
Mm.
I thought that you were going to be a little bit more detailed and specific to the things you were told. You want to try that, Vina? Some of the things you heard.
Yeah, sure. So certainly do as you're told. Don't ask questions. And then I think, as one grows up and comes into teenagerhood and then into young adulthood, the script becomes more, like you say, it does become more and more specific, right? So boys are allowed to do certain things, girls are not. Don't run too fast. Sit with your legs crossed. Don't sit like this. And I think those are the things that I remember a lot, the body things, because I'm a body person. So as soon as you tell girls, don't sit that way, because if you sit that way, you will attract the wrong kind of attention, you are immediately giving her a huge barrier. And here's what happens is that the message that we receive as girls when we hear don't sit like that, the message we receive is you have done something wrong just by being who you are. And the damage that inflicts is unbelievable. I mean, it goes through life if we're not careful. And that's why I'm so keen to tear up the good girl script, because we have to remove that and replace it with a different script. And some of you here are parents. The voice of the parent is extremely important. And what I would say to mothers is, and I have to say, I do not have children. I have never wanted children. I knew as a child that in this lifetime, that is not my job to be a biological parent. I have a different role to play. But what I would say to mothers is that you model for your daughters. It's not what you tell your daughters so much, although that's very impactful, but the way you behave will translate and transfer onto them. So that's why I work with adult women as well, because I think it's so important for adult women to change the script for themselves so that they can then change it for their daughters. And for fathers, I would say that, in some ways, as daughters, we learn from, it's our fathers who tell us how much we can explore and how much we can't explore.
Mm.
So the role of the father is extremely important here.
Wow.
That's very, very true. I concur with you.
Yes, I am blown away, particularly when you talk about identifying that having children of yours is not your role to play in this life. I mean, I'm not sure I've heard it directly from someone like that. But Miss Abby, let me hear from you. One of these views is telling girls don't express strong views in conversations. Which of them did you hear growing up? And how much impact did they have on you?
Well, I would say that growing up, I wasn't much of a speaker. I was a doer. So I had two sides to me, the side that wanted to play with dolls all the time, but I also had the side that wanted to climb trees all the time. So I had the boyish side, which I was always getting told off for. Don't climb that tree, don't do that. Don't be out all day, go back inside. So I'd take my dolls outside, leave them under the tree and then climb the tree. So, and then as I grew up, I got a lot of, as a girl, you've got to listen to what grown-ups tell you. So I had this huge mind, I had to go through 3 years of an undergraduate degree that I didn't want to study because I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a voice to either run away, to say I'm leaving, I don't want to study this. But I was being told what to do and I had to listen for that reason. And I'm grateful I have that degree now, by the way. And I must thank my parents for maybe vicariously forcing that down my throat. But anyway, but the script, the good girl script, is something that follows a woman throughout her life. So it starts off with your parents, you see, and then it goes on to your partner, where your partner expects you to be a good girl because that's why he is with you, because you're a good woman. So it becomes a good woman. And then it becomes good mother. Are you a good enough mother? Are you a good enough a significant other, wife, partner. So it's something that we carry with us as we grow older. So I'll give you an example. I remember, just recently I had a photo shoot, which my sister was helping me with here. And I decided to wear a suit because the theme was androgynous. Yes,
Okay.
so it was a male suit maker who had chosen me, of all people, to, wear this suit and see how it goes with the women. So it was tailored for me. And for me, it looked fantastic. But a lot of women said, but why a suit? First of all, it doesn't go with your teacher image. Secondly, it's very corporate. You're not a very corporate person. And I thought, well, I'm me and I love the suit and I do wear trousers and I do wear dresses. And it's the good girl script again, that you're not allowed to do what you feel because it's deemed rebellious. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's deemed rebellious.
I think that's a really good point. It's that as soon as women, we start to drop into expressing what is true for us, that can be perceived as rebellion, as something that is going to disrupt the status quo. But I actually think that that's a vital part of our role, is to keep questioning the status quo so it doesn't settle into something that oppresses everybody. Because here's the thing, the problem with the good girl script is it doesn't just oppress women, actually. It serves to keep men in their place as well. And I think that's a really important point that we can miss, that, patriarchy oppresses women by saying you're not allowed to speak, but it oppresses men by saying you're not allowed to feel. So nobody can take up space in a full kind of way.
Yes, and it goes both ways, because again, if you don't fit into that traditional girly image, so if you're not very emotional or very girly, then it's not taken well. And as a man, if you're not as macho as you're supposed to be, it's not taken well as well. So in the work I've been doing with my trauma work, I found that a lot of people they're held back by, in fact, they want to talk, but they feel they'll be doing either their parents or their past an injustice. They feel so guilty for speaking the truth, and they feel they have to. There's something I say to them, that you don't owe keeping secrets of the people that hurt you. You can forgive them, but you don't need to hold those secrets. If you were molested, you don't need to hold that as a secret and keep beating yourself about for that. So it's the good girl and the good boy, actually, which doesn't allow us to speak sometimes because we feel that we are doing something wrong. We are not respectful.
Yeah, I wanted to interject here because you mentioned the good boy. I think the good girl syndrome is even much more heavily emphasized than boys behaving. We allow the boys quite a bit of latitude that we do not give to the girls. When boys play, they're outdoors, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of activity, whereas with girls, they play quietly and no one should really hear them, and their playtime is limited because, oh yes, you must, as a girl, learn to cook and know how to clean and know how to take care of your household, because that's part of being a good girl. So the type of play that we allow boys versus girls is very different. The allowances for behavior that is not deemed appropriate is very restrictive for girls as opposed to boys. And that in itself goes on to affect girls starting in primary school. A girl can come into school very, very confident, knowledgeable, doing well. And then we see by the 5th or 6th year is beginning to come down, not because they've lost their intelligence, but they're aware of all the chatter going on around them about, you can't be how can you be such a smart girl? And, are you doing other things? And, the boys should be the leader. I actually always tell, educationist, you really need to encourage the girls to be leaders in the classroom, to speak up, to voice, to give them that lead role so that they can also own that space. But it just goes on. And then from there into the workspace, where the woman is hesitant to give the work she's produced, or to speak up in a meeting because for fear that she may not say the right thing, or she may be perceived as aggressive. We don't use those words when men speak up. We don't say what an aggressive man. But yes, I'm deemed an aggressive woman because I speak, and I own my space. So I am aggressive. I'm not the norm. I'm always wearing trousers, and they're still waiting for the day I'm going to wear a skirt.
But you look great in trousers, by the way.
I wanted to interject quickly and mention something. When I was also talking about the good boy, I was also trying to explain that society sort of puts these labels on. Of course, we're talking about the good girl script, but also the good boy doesn't do certain things that are seen as girly things, so to speak. But they're not attacked as much. I mean, there's been a huge increase. I think it's 50 to 60% of children who are non-binary now, in the schools here, who some of them are claiming to be because they want to belong to a group, and some of them sincerely really are not sure whether they fit into the male or female gender. There's been quite a lot of work in schools trying to determine, is this child seeking for attention? Is something going on at home? And, he's not getting that attention and he's getting that at school? Or is it something deeper and something more meaningful that we need to acknowledge? So I'm talking 50 to 70% of children, especially boys, coming up as non-binary. And again, I mean, that's to do with the good boy thing. But with girls, I feel that I really want to talk about the good teen girl and the good woman, because it's the foundations, it's from the foundations, and you find that you're forever climbing up. And by the time you dissociate from being a good girl, you're often in your 30s or 40s. Yes. And imagine what you would achieve as a girl if you didn't have that label on you.
I think this is a very important point, that it can come at any point in our life, this realization of, hang on a second, there is plenty more that I could be achieving here. And I think that this is why I'm really keen on when I'm working with my coaching clients, I'm working from the present moment, because we can only change, we can only evolve ourselves from this moment that we are in now. And I think that when we do start to evolve ourselves, the question then becomes, okay, once we've torn up that good girl script, what next? What's the next script that we are writing? And I've actually recently had an upgrade on this. So I wanted to share that. This is the first time I'm sharing this publicly. So I'm honored to be sharing this on this podcast. So in the past, I would say that we tear up the good girl script in order to create a happy woman script, or a fulfilled woman script. But now what I'm saying, what's come through recently, is that once we tear up the good girl script, we are becoming the muse of our own life. The muse of our own life, because I think we're at the point now where we need this big, ethereal, grand, artistic vision. That is what the world needs right now. Because we've got this strong polarization politically everywhere, but there's a lot of fear and anger and all of these very brittle, hard kind of discourses and emotions going on. And we need that softness. We need the grandness of art. We need the beauty. I've got this lovely statue behind me. We need beauty. So we are aiming to tear up that script, not just to create a career and achieve things that we then tick off on a box. I think now we're aiming to tear up the good girl script so that we can all become works of art. So that's my invitation here.
I agree. And the word that I've been using lately is our feminine power, is that we've got this feminine power that we need to learn to use to get us to where it is we wish to go. And that's the thing that we need to nurture. starting at a young age, and definitely through things like mentorship and sponsorship and being a role model. I mean, a real role model in the essence of owning yourself. We can push that agenda much further. But I agree with you. It is time to be. I am my own muse. I actually spend time laughing at myself and creating this. I wish people could see me some days. They would think, I can't be the same woman. But I'm having a grand time in my life right now. It's like I've waited to have fun and be artistically and expressive in all ways possible. And I don't know, how else can I do it but be me?
Exactly.
But has it always been like that for you, Dr. Amma? Because usually most of the gender pressure we're talking about here is also complicated by issues around race, color, and culture. I've heard you on this platform talk about how intimidated some men are around you and why they ask, why do you dress like a man? Why do you have a mind of your own? Did you grow up? Did you wake up as a baby, given all the chance to be who you are today? Or did you have to fight your way through?
Well, that's a very good question, Ifemi, because I don't want to go too deeply into my life. You won't be surprised about that because I keep some of it private. But I will say this. I had, because my father is late now, I had an incredible father who cherished and loved all of his children. But I will say in my own little way, I think my father spent more time pushing the girls to just be who they were more than anybody else. So I give great credit to my father. And I think that the more girls who have fathers who value them and give them that space to be themselves, to ask questions, to express themselves, to identify what they love to do, to select what they wish to read in uni, how they wish to live their lives, the better for women to reach that state of being. In my case, whilst I had that, I also have some incredible women in my lives who were role models as to how you can express yourself. It's one thing to have the platform, but to have other women show you how you can express yourself, and that it's okay to say things like, no, I don't want to do that, or no, I don't agree with that, is fantastic. But then I have to be honest, I also had, when we were briefly in Nigeria in the 70s, I had a grandmother who was very traditional and just could not figure me out. It's like, who is this mental case who can't abide by anything that she's told to do? She used to use it. I didn't know then that it was a derogatory term to use to address me, but I did find out when her son, my father, said that's inappropriate, and I'm not going to repeat it here. But the thing is, because I have lived I'm a global citizen and influenced by so many cultures. I did have those who tried to impose their ideas of how I should be. But luckily for me, with my father and all of these supporting women that I call my moms, really, I was able to push my agenda. I did have times when I had to, for one moment, stop and think, will life be a little bit easier if I just sort of tagged along? Sorry to say, I decided no, it won't be. And here I am today. But I did have some knocks along the way where I had to stop and reassess. But I've always been able to say no. I've always been able to speak my mind. I was always encouraged to share who I was. But I did have people who didn't care for it, and probably some who still don't tolerate it. But here I am, unapologetically, as per, Abby wrote a book. And so her book was unapologetic, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So there you go. We've all used that phrase today. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a
Kudos
nutshell,
to-
yes.
Yes, kudos to daddy and the mummies that played a pivotal role in who you have become today, Dr. Amma. And I think that should bring us to the role of parenting in all of this. Vina tipped that earlier in our opening remarks, and I'd love to hear Miss Abby's thoughts about this, particularly when you consider the fact that it is normal for parents to want their children to be kind. Growing up, children have been taught to be kind, obedient, polite, friendly, and not selfish. But
Mm.
then we also now see that there is the implication of that with the good girl syndrome, where there is this element of fear of disappointing others, fear of speaking out, of not hurting others, and this obligation to excel, avoid conflict, and things like that. How do we begin to draw the line, Miss Abby?
Well, I think parenting is the most difficult task. And I can ask the oldest parent here, Dr. Amma, to attest to that. It is a very, very difficult task. And I approach parenting with very positively and very naturally, in the sense that I haven't chosen the type of parent, authoritarian or liberal or all that. I'm just me, and I'm parenting actually a lot from what I have taken and removed from the way I was parented. Certainly, there were many, many good aspects of the way I was parented that I've borrowed from, and there are many that I choose not to look at all. But as a parent, I have two girls, very different, chalk and cheese, apples and pears, totally different, but two girls, one very boisterous and one very, very feminine. And having used the word feminine, she's actually become very sporty in the last few months. So I suppose that's shifting a bit. But having said that, she could still be feminine and sporty, whichever way. I believe that all parents need to accept each child individually. And the way you parent one child must be very different to the way you parent another child, because they're two separate human beings. The way you communicate with each child should be different as well. There's some children that need more time, more of the alone time, they call it, with you. And then some children really like to be on their own. So for those parents who have 4, 5, 6 children, it is quite a lot of work, keying into each child's temperament and personality and what that child needs and everything like that. But the way I hope to continue doing this is to continue bringing them up as world citizens, genderless pretty much. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve so long as you put your mind to it. I certainly wouldn't create any boundaries or restrictions in terms of what they choose to be occupied with, if they choose to become fencers or bodybuilders and things like that, because their happiness is what is the most important thing to me right now. And every day is very important to me, and them being happy is key.
I have
That's
to
very
second that one.
Abby.
Yeah.
Dr. Amma, you wanted to say?
Yeah.
I was going to say that, for us to tear up the gender book, or in my case, good girl syndrome, good girl complex, however I want to say it, I do say that it's going to be really important to parent our children in a manner where they are themselves and they're able to blossom and have that space to thrive. I mean, thrive is a big word for me in my life, but we also have to teach them to set boundaries, as opposed to letting others always set boundaries for them. Because when others set boundaries for you, they limit you. But if you can set your own boundaries, then you're more in control. And what happens with the good girl syndrome or complex is that somebody else has set those boundaries for the girls. And those are the boundaries that limit them. And those are the boundaries that they struggle with as they become teenagers, as they become adults, because you put a parameter around how they should be, as opposed to they deciding, this is how I wish to be. And that in itself helps them to build confidence and self-esteem and self-validation. Too many women spend their time looking for external validation. Oh, am I looking well? Or does that look nice? Or should I wear this? Or did I say the right thing? As opposed to, I know I'm wearing the right thing and I look nice and I am going to say the right thing and I did say the right thing. And it all stems from the restrictions as to how you fit and how you should be a good girl or a good wife or a good mother. So much of that good girl syndrome is tied into our relationship with males. Are you the good girl? Are you the good wife? Are you the good partner? Are you the good sister? Are you the good mother? It's all tied into some expectation of us, which I don't think it's realistic, and I think is limited women in the long run.
Yes, I also think, Dr. Amma, there's we are taught to be selfless very, very early on.
Yes.
And as a girl grows older, she becomes more and more selfless and takes on, new roles. And there's very little of her left. And she's running on literally zero because she's become so selfless because she's put everybody first, whether it's her family, immediate family, or her children or her significant other. It's all about selflessness. And that again goes back to what you said about boundaries. I cannot do this. I do not have the will to do this or the interest to do this or the capacity to do this, which we are never taught to say. We are never taught to say. I can't remember whether it was Vino or Dr. Mother said, we're not taught to say no.
Yeah, I think there's also a very important piece that's coming up here around the generational piece, in the sense that, Nifemi, you mentioned, the cultural piece around this, and that perhaps different countries also have different approaches and so on. But when I've noticed that when women start to blossom and tear up that good girl script and replace it with a new script, often what comes up is guilt. And I know this, that I've experienced this myself. We feel guilty because what about the other women around us? What about the mother? What about the grandmother? What about all of that heritage that I'm so proud of and I'm so much a part of? So this guilt comes up. And I think finding a way to let that guilt go is a really important piece here. And I think the way that we do that is by recognizing that we are where we are because of everything that has gone before us. So we're not going against what's gone before us. We are evolving it. We are adding to it. We are, in fact, honoring it by creating a new script for ourselves. And when we step into that space of evolution, we are making available a whole new reality for other people to join in. So I just wanted to bring that piece up about the guilt piece, because I've seen that can be so corrosive. It can be the thing that keeps hooking us back into the old pattern. And it can be very, very subtle. So I think that's a really big part of the work here.
Absolutely. You know what, Vina?
I agree.
I'm going to recommend this particular podcast to my wife, because anytime I take her out to have a nice time, she always return home guilty because the children are not there.
Yeah.
She just can never imagine having a nice time without her children being around. And I think it's one of the things we're talking about here. So as we begin to wrap up, I like us to focus on what must be done. You talked about tearing up a script and coming up with a totally different one. I studied a research from Stanford University some months ago. And, certain participants were asked to list the desired adjectives for men and women. And one thing was key. The fact is that the most desirable trait for a woman is that people just...
Oh, we lost you, Nifemi.
Muted. Okay, I'm muted now.
Is he muted? I don't think he is. It may have been the connection.
No, it's funny, Nifemi said about the guilt about going out, and how ladies that go out after work are seen as very, very male, going out with your girlfriend is seen as a terrible thing in some, in some circles, leaving your children behind to be looked after by somebody else to have a good time, especially in some cultures, is seen as totally irresponsible. I really can't get my head around that, to be honest, because how do you get a balance of how do you, enjoy your life if you're...
Yeah, that's a good point. Because that's a very good point, because I always say to people, it's about life. You need to live, and work and family and all of those other things are a subset of living. So living your life is so critical, because that's the only way that you can demonstrate to others what is possible. The way you show your girls or your children that they can take care of themselves is by you taking care of yourself, by having some balance in your life. You shouldn't feel guilty that you're going out to have, go out for dinner or drinks. Actually, women even feel guilty about buying a pair of shoes or buying a dress for themselves. But their male partners have absolutely no, oh, I need a pair of shoes. They'll stop off and they'll buy it and they'll be perfectly fine. But they're there saying, oh, I can save this, or I can do this, or do I really need it? But if you're working and you're earning and you're taking care of everything else, why should you feel guilty about something for you? But that's intrinsically always taught to us from a very young age, be frugal, be sensible. That's another word I can't stand. Be sensible. God, you know what I mean. Just be sensible. It's like, sensible about what? But it's a phrase that's used so frequently. Be sensible, be good, be thoughtful. But this is not about being kind, because we're always kind and we're always giving. And if you're not kind, you're penalized for not being kind. If you're not sensible, you're penalized for not being sensible. But be sensible. I hope I don't hear that word again after today.
All right. This is a fantastic conversation. I'd just like us to quickly speak to the impact that this has on women at the workplace. There was a research by the Harvard Business Review showing that only about 7% of female MBA graduates attempt to negotiate their salary, while 57% of men are willing to negotiate. And this also is an offshoot of one of the things that we have talked about. I'd like to have your comments on this.
Nifemi, I'm so glad you brought that up. We can even go further back to women applying for jobs. A man will apply for a job with only 40 or 50% of the prerequisites for the job. A woman is waiting until she's got 90 to 100%. Yeah. Meanwhile, the man has advanced himself, put himself forward, and if he has a good sponsor or mentor in an organization, he gets the position. And nobody is asking about the woman who they know has the skill set that can do the job. So it comes to negotiations as well. We're too busy trying to figure out, well, should I, shouldn't I? Am I worth it? That's another thing women do. Am I worth it? Is this the right time? Oh, I'll wait till this day when this is occurring, then I'll bring it up. Meanwhile, a man is just going straight for the jugular. You're not paying me enough. You pay that person, my coworker is earning $100 more, £100 more, and we're doing the same job, and you really should. So it goes back to this socialization. Don't speak up, speak up. If you're going to speak up, make sure the man or the person is in the right mood before you say what you need to say. But you're at the job place. No, it's true. It just do it and get what it is that you want and be yourself. Just be you. That's the most important thing. So yes, Nifemi, it's really affecting women in the workspace, in the workplace, because they're not speaking up for extra hours. They're not speaking up for extra assignments. They go into a conference room, they say something in a meeting, and then a man sitting next to them will repeat the same thing. And he'll get all the, oh, yes, brilliant idea, John. Oh, John, fantastic. And she doesn't say, wait a second, I just said that 10 minutes ago. She just lets it go by, like, well, John's taking the accolade. Hopefully, John will allow me to work on this project with him. But Sally over here actually started it. So women need to use their voices. We don't use our voices because we're told that we should be speaking softly like this. Not the way I'm speaking, but just use your, the ladies understand, speak softly. And you shouldn't speak too loudly, and just be soft. No, I don't want to be soft, and women shouldn't have to be soft unless they choose to be soft. But society says we should speak in a certain manner, we should sit in a certain manner, we should present ourselves in a certain manner. Why?
All right, Vina, let me hear your thoughts about this.
I'm
taking your closing remarks now.
I have two thoughts on this. One is that negotiation is about communication, and that when we speak, in order to speak impactfully, the way we hold the body is an extremely important part of that. So this is something that I actually teach. I actually have a program on this called Posture for Powerful Communication. Because if Sally, in Dr. Emma's example, was holding her body and comporting herself in a particular way and projecting herself into the space in a particular way, John would not be able to steal her idea. I can guarantee that. Yep. And my second thought is about money, because you were talking about negotiation for a salary raise. And I think that solving and upgrading women's relationship with money will change the planet for the better, for everybody. Mm-hmm. Money actually represents life energy. That's why it's so tricky for everybody. It's not just tricky for women, but it's particularly tricky for women. Once we are able to come into a space of ease with money, ease in the sense of knowing that we deserve it, that we are capable of handling it, that we are capable of managing it, we're capable of attracting it and spending it and looking after it and curating it, that actually will then change the way that we relate to everything else in our lives. For me, it's one of the 4 key parts of tearing up the good girl script. Fixing our relationship with money is foundational because it represents our capacity to be at ease with being on the material plane, with being at ease in the world, with taking up space. So that's something that I'm very, very keen on, that for women to develop a direct relationship with money. Even if you don't have a job and you're not earning, in quotes, and I'm using air quotes there, you have a direct relationship with money. And it's important to consciously cultivate that knowledge. I have a direct relationship with money. I have the capacity to hold money and to curate money well. That's it.
May I just add something to that people will be surprised about? So in 60% of the consumers in the world are the women. The women are the ones with the buying power. In the developing world, it's 80%. And yet, going back to what Vina just said, they still struggle with owning that power and having a good relationship with money. So it's something that we need to think about getting into schools so that girls learn at a very young age what it means to have a good relationship with money, not looking for someone to take care of them and to hold the money, but owning the money and the relationship of how you work with it and how you own it and how you use it for yourself. And I think that will help tremendously with negotiations because they're the ones doing 60% of the buying in the world and 80% in the developing world. Women have it, they're just not owning it. You have to own it.
Indeed.
I'm so glad you said that, Vina. Thank you.
You're next, Miss Abby.
Oh, yes. I've had several different thoughts running through my head about women and money. And first of all, I thought about the girls who, for cultural reasons, have to go back home after their degrees, because the parents fear they will not find a suitable partner from the same race abroad. You will be surprised that many parents feel their children need to come back home immediately after their masters and not work, because the girl's job is not to work. there has to be a provider. And these girls, their dreams are cut short, literally. They have to go back and they'll work in, whether it's India or Nigeria or Kenya, they'll work. But I feel they'd contribute so much more, because obviously within 2-3 years of going back home, they do get settled and start having children. So that's from a very elevated point of view of these are the very educated social circles. But then we go down to the other social circle, the working class social circle, should I say, if you don't mind me using that word, that classification, where again, it's the same thing with the bride price, with, getting the women ready, the money attached to that, and survival. So my question is, how do we get the girls to own their own script, get rid of the good girl script? Because the girls also internalize this fear of not being able to carry on and make their families happy with a huge wedding or with children. Not many people have the courage Veena has. Not many people have the courage Dr. Amma has, or I have. I chose to raise my children on my own. So, but not many people have that courage because of what people will say.
I think that's a really important point. And I think it is true that there will be different circles, if you like, of this playing out. And I think that's where, for those of us who do have the courage, we just need to keep going. And in a way, not feel guilty about those that don't have the courage or don't have the opportunity or have made different choices. And that's been a really painful realization. It's taken me a long time to come to that, you know what, it's okay for me to have the courage that I have. It's okay for me to make the choices that I have, and I have the privilege to be able to do that. And it's okay for me to step into that, because again, by doing that, I am creating a strong energy field, a reality that is then available to more women who wish to take it up. And that's all I can do.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it sounds like each person has to take a step or a stand for themselves in one way or another in order to tear up the script, get rid of the syndrome, and advance in the path that they have chosen so that they can thrive.
Absolutely.
Oh, the next word we're going to get rid of is settling down. That's another word I can't start. Settled. We need to get rid of that word. It's like, what do you mean she's settled? She's settled down. Wait, that's the next word we're coming to deal with.
Because we're not settled down, we're bouncing all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. So get rid of, that's the next word we're coming after, is settling down. Settling down. Yes. It means like it's almost as if you're sort of shortchanging, you're just making, no, we don't want that word anymore. So striking that one off the list.
But the reality is, many, as I said, for many women, by the time they have the courage to tear up the script, it's often too late. So I think one of my roles, the one role that I try to fulfill now is giving children courage. And often they come to me and they say, I want to be a pilot, and I'm a girl, and my parents are saying no. And then, preparing the girl how she's going to approach her parents and talking to the parents. But the reality is, it has to be done not just at home. We can't expect, it's not just a parenting role. I always come back to this, Nifemi, that it's also the education institutions. It's also all the other communities, this community, this podcast community. We have a role to play. It cannot just be parenting, because surely a lot of parents have ticked all the boxes and their children still have not followed their script, simply. And they're not bad parents. All parents try their best, as I keep saying, to do what they feel is the best for their child. Like my parents, like Dr. Amma's parents, like Veena's parents, they've all done what they feel is the right thing to do. And it's no slur on them that we've chosen maybe a different path. So it's not about parenting at this point. I think it's about community and information seeping into the communities.
Well, I know that we can go on and on because we're all quite passionate about this topic, but we have to go and then we'll find time to return for more. But if there's
No,
one
but
thing I like,
before we
yes,
go, I need to put Nifemi on the hot seat because you're a father of two girls. What are you
indeed.
going to do for your girls to get rid of this good girl syndrome?
Yeah, so listening to all of you, I'm getting to find out and further reinforce my belief that a woman's worth should be defined by what she can be to others. Usually what we've seen now is a good girl's pride is in how much she can bend and shrink for those she loves. And I overheard someone say, unlike the male politicians, a female politician would like to introduce herself first as a mom, a wife, or grandmother, to appeal to that good expectation of her. So I'm going to raise my well, luckily for me, let me say fortunately, I have just two girls and I'm not planning to have another child. So I don't have a choice than to raise them to live above board and also not to be held down by all of these limitations. I'm truly inspired by your talk on this podcast, and I want to say a big thank you to every one of you. Dr. Ama, a big thank you to your dad. Kudos to him for raising someone like you. Vina, thank you for sharing. We hope to have you more in subsequent episodes. Miss Abby,
And
it's
you
good to see
forgot
you
Miss
again.
Abby.
Oh, you
Oh
remember?
yeah, I was coming to her. I was saving her for the last. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining us.
you.
Thank you very
That's
much.
our
Thank
show
you,
on this
everyone.
episode. See you guys again next week.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Vina.